Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's webinar hosted by Litmos. My name is Tim Durand. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm the head of marketing here at Litmos. And for today's webinar, I will be covering how to be the top dog in your industry by training with Salesforce and Litmos. I'm joined by John Carlo Torres from San Francisco SPCA, Elizabeth Noyes, Senior Manager of Sales Onboarding Programs from Salesforce, and Steve Cunha here at Litmos, our Director of Ecosystem. So the agenda for today's webinar is as follows. We'll begin with a quick overview of litmos.org, salesforce.org, and our existing partnership with Salesforce, and what that means for our customers that we work with. And then we'll hand it over to John from SF SPCA, who's one of our great joint customers who's utilizing Litmos and Salesforce to drive change within his organization and really kind of understand his case study. And lastly, we'll finish up with an overview of the integration so everyone on the phone can see how it works in action. All right, so for those of you on the phone who are not familiar with Litmos, we're going to do a quick overview. We're a learning company that offers both award-winning learning technology as well as industry-leading out-of-the-box course content. We pride ourselves on not only providing modern technology that helps organizations with their internal and external training needs, but also providing the best customer support in the industry, which is backed up by G2 Crowd, our rating of the highest customer satisfaction ratings in the industry. So today, since we're going to be showcasing one of our great nonprofit customers, SF SPCA, and their case study, I wanted to do a quick overview of litmos.org and what that means for our nonprofit customers. So litmos.org is our nonprofit division here at Litmos, and we love working with as many of our nonprofit customers that we have, and we have a lot of them, as you can see, and SF SPCA being one of them. And our nonprofit division is all about educating change for our customers. And we really do this in three main ways, which you'll see on this slide, but it's all about building mission awareness for our nonprofits through training, reducing time and resources within their organizations, because at times some of these organizations don't have all the resources that maybe some other organizations have, and also working with our nonprofit customers to deploy volunteer and employee training within their organizations, really to drive that change through education like we're talking about. So to learn more about litmos.org or to learn about our nonprofit discounts that we offer here at Litmos, visit us at litmos.org or email us at nonprofit@litmos.com. So without further ado, I just want to do a quick overview of both Litmos and our .org division here. But I'm going to hand it over now to Elizabeth Noyes from Salesforce to take us through the Salesforce portion of the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So first, let's start with our partnership with Litmos and Calidus Cloud. Calidus Cloud Solutions makes it easy for salespeople to manage their entire commissions lifecycle and learning management system directly from within their Salesforce environment. These solutions are turnkey and dramatically shorten the time to value. They're repeatable, installable packages that deliver seamless integration between the two environments. Salesforce and Calidus Cloud are strengthening the integration and use of technology for sales and service organizational alignment. By working within the same platform, the collaboration also increases and improves user adoption. They're also a front runner. Calidus Cloud's Commission and Litmos products are currently ranked as leaders in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for both sales performance management and learning management, serving 7 of the top 10 insurers and high-tech companies and 6 of the top 10 telecommunication companies, serving thousands of users and beyond. So with 7 apps on the App Exchange, Calidus Cloud provides its 5,000 customers and potentially millions of Salesforce users with solutions in learning management, surveys, forecasting, pipeline management, marketing, email, demand generation automation, and more. This strategic alignment with direct sellers and product teams stems from a tight relationship with the technical community using the Calidus Cloud products. So next steps. Within the next month, you can expect further engagement between Salesforce, Calidus Cloud, and Litmos in the financial services, insurance, telecommunication industries, and also in our nonprofit industries, providing salespeople and volunteers with more integrated value, ease of use, and new capabilities. This partnership is important because when our mutual customers gain access to key data, collateral, lead intelligence, campaign information, training courses, and financial data, all from within their familiar Salesforce environments, they become dramatically more productive and empowered. So a little bit about Salesforce.org as well. So early on at Salesforce, we moved well beyond the traditional corporate giving, which maybe could impact thousands, beyond the traditional 1-1-1 model that many of you may have heard of, that was part of our founding, which was on the scale of millions of people affected, and into our version 3, which is Salesforce.org, which is on the scale of billions. Salesforce.org is a nonprofit social enterprise born out of Salesforce to give back to communities around the world. And we do this in 3 different ways. The first is technology. We deliver the world's best technology and educational technology solutions at affordable rates so that these organizations can have access to the same cutting-edge products that businesses do and can therefore make a bigger difference and bigger impact. Second, our unique self-funding model allows us to reinvest our revenue into the community through strategic grants focused on education and workforce development. And finally, none of this would be possible without the collaboration, support, and innovation of our community and the ripple effect of change they create with their work. Every member of our community, from employees and partners to customers and grantees, are making a huge impact in the nonprofit sector. These strategic areas of focus, when combined, allow us to collectively accelerate our impact on a massive scale for and with our community of stakeholders. So with that, Tim, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Great overview of Salesforce.org and how we're working together from a partnership perspective. So really, really appreciate you being on today's webinar and giving that overview for us. So I think now is the portion that everyone on the phone is waiting for. I'd like to introduce John Carlo Torres, like I said, from San Francisco SPCA. Been one of our great customers here at Litmos and also working with Salesforce. So a joint customer for us. Couldn't think of anyone more perfect to be on a webinar where we're talking about being the top dog in your industry, being that you'll see here that they work with a lot of animals in their organization. So John, with further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you and take us through your case study here.
Great. Hello, good morning, everyone. I wanted to start out by just letting everyone know a little bit about the San Francisco SPCA. We are an independent local nonprofit, and we are an animal shelter as well as a veterinary hospital and provide a number of community programs in San Francisco. San Francisco has the lowest euthanasia rate of any major city in the U.S., and we're the 4th oldest humane society in the United States, making us 149 years old this year. So we've been around for a pretty long time. I wanted to get started with letting everyone know kind of where we were before the Salesforce Litmos integration. Our volunteer services department is really using both these platforms, and before launching with this, we had many different departments using a different volunteer management system, and it was not really flexible enough for all the departments. So what really ended up happening is that they were all sort of using different tools, and even within our volunteer services department, they had volunteers who were supporting our organization. They were not using a learning management tool at that time. The volunteer database they were using, they kind of stretched it to accommodate learning management, and so it was not the best tool to train our volunteers. And when our volunteers were using the system, they were presented a lot of options because not only was it managing volunteers, but it was also managing the learning management. So it was a little bit messy for the volunteer and hard to train them on how to really use the platform. We also were using separate databases with the organization, and so it was just one more database to have to manage and keep things up, and we really wanted to sort of consolidate all of our data. The previous system did not integrate with any of our other systems, so it was completely standalone, and we here have 2 separate campuses in San Francisco, and both campuses were using completely separate management systems for volunteers. So there was a lot of databases, and we really wanted to consolidate. And just to give people an understanding of where we were each one of these boxes represents a different database. And so you can see that they're all kind of separate and standalone. And we really wanted to move into a direction where we were using Salesforce to better manage our data and really have a complete overview of all of these different data points. So why Salesforce and why Litmos? Our organization is moving towards leveraging Salesforce for programs and all of our data. And we really are striving for that 360 view of our supporters. Our learning and development team was already using Litmos internally for our staff and was having great success. So they really encouraged us to sort of expand this platform to our volunteers and really give them a tool that they didn't really have before because the learning management system didn't exist for that particular department. This integration really allows our staff to be focusing in on one database so they don't have to be switching back and forth and spending time trying to figure out what data is accurate and up to date. And this really allows our growth to be sort of endless. With 2 campuses and a growing number of volunteers, we are able to continue to scale and have the resources to better manage all of the different departments with all of their different volunteers and learning needs. The integration is really important because the Salesforce ecosystem has a lot of partners, and there's a lot of apps in the App Exchange, which is a huge plus for us to be able to integrate with all of our systems. And it's a highly customizable database, so it allows us to continue to consolidate all of our data and allows us to keep that data across campuses in sync and all within the same system. So I wanted to show where we are now in our database, and you can see this is a very different picture than where we were a few years ago. And what we've done is we've integrated all of our different databases, and they're all feeding into Salesforce now. And not only is our data in there, we're also building out a number of applications where we're taking that data and we're using it to fuel our programs and keep all of our data consolidated. This was a really huge accomplishment, and we're really excited that we're getting to a point where we can start to see a 360 view of our supporters in many different ways, from volunteering to donating and also being one of our clients either at the hospital or adopting from us. So we really had sort of a dream and a big goal and this giant puzzle that we had to figure out with data. And by using these platforms, we are better in so many ways. By cutting back on all this manual processes and dealing with spreadsheets and not having the data really consolidated, we're saving a lot of time now that we have a system that's putting it all together. And by giving time back to our staff, we're able to focus on our programs, and that growth is really saving us money because our staff is focusing on the work and the mission. All of that ultimately saves countless lives and is touching thousands of people. Our programs really touch a lot of people in our community, and it allows us to focus in on the animals and focus in on our supporters. We continue to be data-driven and having an oversight really allows us to be more strategic and make decisions off of the data that we're collecting. And this has really helped us fuel new community programs and allows our teams to go out and get funding for the important work that they're doing in the community, because we have something to back it up. And most importantly for us, we have been striving for this 360 view of our supporters. We're a fairly large organization, and having all of these databases didn't allow us to really dive deep into understanding who our supporters were. So by using Salesforce, we're able to really get a sense of how you're supporting us. And our volunteers are a huge, important part of our organization. And with Litmos, we're able to better train those volunteers, and they have an overall better experience with the organization, which is really important to us because they provide countless number of hours supporting our animals. There's many, many benefits to our staff and to volunteers. And we just launched with this application a few months ago, and these are sort of our results so far, just within the last couple months. We've had very positive feedback from our volunteers, and they're really enjoying the new learning management system because it is a lot more complex, and there's a lot of sort of materials that are available to them. It's saving our staff a lot of time not having to validate completion of courses. So the system automatically, with the integration, knows when a volunteer has completed their courses necessary to perform a certain job, and all of that validation is happening automatically. So our staff doesn't have to go in and manually check everything anymore. And by using Litmos, we're sending out less email and we're printing out less materials because volunteers can just log on and view all of those course materials online. And overall, we're having better content for different learning styles. We are able to use videos and images to really help with the different learning styles. And this has been a really big positive feedback from our volunteers, that they really enjoy sort of how the course materials are presented now. And from a data perspective, we have much cleaner records, and reporting is a lot easier to kind of see where we are at with our volunteers. It's really important to focus in on the reporting, because our staff is spending a lot of time sifting through different reports and different systems. So this has been a big benefit for our staff. And also, we have a lot more automation. So our business processes are smoother, and we are able to do more because we're cutting out all of that sort of manual data labor that we had in the past. Finally, I wanted to have a final takeaway of the top 5 things that we recommend when looking for a learning management system, and just kind of some tips along the way that we've learned from our journey with integrating and using Salesforce and Litmos to sort of power our programs. You really need someone within the organization and in leadership to advocate and support your vision. It's a long process, and it can get difficult at times. So it's important to stay motivated and have someone internally who can really help push the project forward and keep it a top priority. I think it's really important to think big and check in with everyone in your organization. We learned along the way, once we sort of started integrating and building, that there were other departments that that could use the application. And so it was really great to be able to expand and include more groups that were having volunteer needs, and we weren't fully aware of that in the beginning. So I think it's really important to sort of check in with all of your stakeholders and all of the individuals in your organization to see if they would benefit from a platform like this. Have a plan and start small. Don't get overwhelmed with all the work. Really take it one step at a time. Things can get a little difficult at times and integrations can get tricky, but if you start small, you have these small milestones and wins, and it really encourages you to keep going and complete the full plan. Be smart about your resources. A lot of times nonprofits have volunteer support and just different support from different areas, whether that be someone's time or from a budget perspective, and really think through the resources and the pros and cons of those resources. Working with volunteers can sometimes be challenging, and so it's important to think through the important pieces of your integration and making sure that you allocate sort of resources to make sure that those important pieces are being looked at, and using volunteers when you can, but also keeping in mind that sometimes working with those volunteers can be challenging to do sort of pro bono work. And finally, I would say start now, get started right away, whether that's drafting a plan or coming up with a vision of where you want to go in the future, really getting your ideas out there so that you can start to really, find that internal owner who's going to help you pull that project together, or start to think about how you're going to fund a project like this. But starting now is really key because it can take some time, and if you have a plan out there, I think that really encourages and motivates everyone to get started and finally sort of make it a little bit more real, because you are getting it down on paper and you're starting to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. Awesome story for you guys. I know you guys are, like you said, you've been around for quite some time now in a very well-known nonprofit here in the San Francisco area, but still being able to make some serious impact with implementing this technology across the organization, and certainly seeing some great results just in the short amount of time that you guys have been implemented. So that's awesome. I really appreciate you being here on the webinar with us and sharing with everyone on the call your story and how you guys have been able to get there. So so that's awesome. We've started to get some questions coming in. Be sure to ask your questions. We'll certainly answer them at the end of the call. I did also want to note for any of the people on the phone today that are kind of thinking about getting started and listening to John's story, and maybe don't have as big of an organization as San Francisco SPCA. Certainly resources on the Litmos side to help with the integration between Litmos and Salesforce, really straightforward. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, we also do offer pre-built course content specific for nonprofit industry and things like that to really help our nonprofit organizations deploy and go live and get time to value extremely quickly. So just wanted to make sure everyone, if you're not at an organization the size of John's, there's certainly resources that can help you to get there. So awesome. Well, thank you, John, again. I think now it's time to kind of see the nuts and bolts and how the integration works at a high level. So I'm going to hand it over now to Steve Cunha here from Litmos, and he's going to take us through the integration. Great.
Thank you, Tim. And again, great job, John and Elizabeth. I have a tough act to follow here. So we're going to start on the App Exchange really quickly before we just jump into the demo. The reason being is I want to just show everybody in the audience today that We are on the App Exchange, the Salesforce App Exchange, as John noted earlier, and we are a managed package, meaning you can download this straight into your Salesforce organization and begin using that package once it's been configured. Now, some details to take into account before you go ahead and install are, custom objects, custom tabs, and these are components of our application that you'll begin using once the app is installed. In fact, objects we will sync to, right? We will sync our data into, as John mentioned, for perhaps some platform automation or for some reporting needs and necessities. I'm going to go ahead and log into the demo account now. As you can see, I am logging in as Lenny Litmos. So Lenny will be taking us through this test drive today. And I've logged into the Sales Cloud. When I've installed Litmos, though, it can be added as a tab, right, on your navigation, but most frequently it's access to the Force app menu before it's shared with any profiles in your organization. So typically the app is installed, and then you'll configure which profiles receive access to the Litmos tab. And the Litmos tab is going to show you the system. Right, so this will look very familiar to existing Litmos customers. You'll notice there's a bit of a color scheme here that is been designed to match the Salesforce experience. And I've just switched to the learner view, and this is going to be the area that employees come into, right? So these are people who belong to the organization. Those who do not belong to the organization will log into Litmos at a separate domain, right? The main domain, which is outside of Salesforce. So there's this dual versatility of being able to access Litmos within the Salesforce platform, as well as being able to access Litmos as a standalone application, data created in either place, syncing back to the org. When I click on the learner's view, I land on the Courses to Do tab. So it's going to show me progress in each of the courses that I am currently assigned to. So this does not include courses that I can sign up for as self-registration. And I can look through the most popular or trending courses in the course library. Moving along the tabs here, we'll see I can even look back at courses I've recently viewed or popular categories that have been put together to group maybe subject matter courses. We'll have the Achievements tab here to review what you've accomplished in the past, and we have some gamification features you can enable, which are great for incentivizing people to take their training and heighten the engagement or create some excitement around what you're doing for education. Litmos also has a component of instructor-led training. So if you're an organization that needs to have some kind of in-person experience, right, or a classroom-based setting for maybe some continuing education units or some certifications, these can be offered as a component in our system and tracked from start to end. We're talking registration, roll call, wait lists. In fact, if I wanted to learn more about any one of these sessions with these instructors at these specific times, I could click Learn More. I can even scroll down and see if I'm registered to any sessions. In fact, I am. And I can view these sessions on a calendar view if I was opposed to the list view we've been provided. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the learner view. Again, I can click into a course and look at the module content I've been assigned. So for those of you new to Litmos, the makeup of a course are modules, and these are your content pieces. So here's an example Litmos Getting Started course walking you through different areas of the system, each module covering a different aspect of the system. If I click into the second course of this curriculum, I'll see that I've actually began some progress on certain modules. I can click into maybe a module I have not started yet and begin reviewing the content, this being an example PowerPoint, right, that I need to click through completely, 100% in order to maintain or earn a completion status. Now you'll notice there are some other tabs across the top of the navigation bar, and these are all installed with the package as well. And these tabs are primarily used by administrators or folks that are in charge of the education programs, right, in these organizations, so folks like John. And there are several different tabs here because each one serves a different purpose. These two are really extracted out of the setup tab. There is a similar management piece in the setup tab, so we'll go ahead and click on the setup tab. And this is the global settings configuration, really. It shows that your account is successfully connected to a Litmos account, right? Your Salesforce org connected to a Litmos account. This is where you can choose to create users from Salesforce in Litmos by going to a Visual Force page. Or similarly, if you're training people outside the organization, in the previous example from John, these are volunteers, right, who may be coming on to specific events or coming back again and again whenever they can help. They don't have a Salesforce login, but they need to be trained. Well, you can create that contact record that you use to manage this person in your Salesforce org in Litmos to create a profile. You can do so in bulk. So those are two nifty point-and-click features that allow you to create user profiles in Litmos on the fly. We also have global settings that allow you to choose maybe some automated provisioning or choose between your views, right, your UIs in Salesforce. There are UI configurations on our standalone application as well. So this is a simple checkbox to flip between the two, but you can get very customized in how you want your look and feel to be portrayed to your learners. And this automation, right, is also a checkbox, but with the power of the platform, you can configure additional rules to say, I want these profile types to be created, or maybe I'll just share the Litmos tab with employees, and when they click on the tab, they'll be created in real time, which is another nifty feature with Litmos. So you can be completely hands-off and just let people access the training tab as soon as they're brought on as a new hire, and they'll log into Litmos and begin taking their introductory courses. We even have settings that allow you to sync your role hierarchy. Your role hierarchy is your Salesforce structure. So I can click over to show some of you that structure really quickly, as it is a feature more aligned with organizations of larger size or of complex nature. But the role hierarchy really aligns with the departments or the product divisions in a not-for-profit, right? It may be your locations, as John mentioned earlier. It might be a location-based, office-based structure. You can copy this directly into Litmos as a team structure with the click of a button. So what that allows you to do is mirror your system infrastructure from CRM into LMS, and with another click of a button, you can appoint each person from the respective group into the appropriate group in Litmos. And what that does is allow you to segment training specifically to different groups of users, right, that may have certain qualifications or different attributes or different training needs. And lastly, on the global settings section here is a recommended course list setup. And this is a feature designed for employees who are accessing Salesforce opportunities, cases, and leads. And what it allows us to do is configure rules and mappings. So if I wanted to say I want to recommend courses to people who are working on cases, I can choose field values here that should drive course assignment. And in this example, we have maybe the case reason or the case type, right? If the case reason is a malfunction or the case type is a high priority, or if the status is unanswered, perhaps a course needs to be recommended to the support representative handling that case. Once those fields have been chosen, you would begin setting up an example course mapping with those fields. So I mentioned different field values for some of the examples. Here are two course mappings that have already been created. Example, case reason being a breakdown. You assign the course alternative routes to accomplishing the project goal. What the field labels product, and you have a product type, maybe a course that aligns with that product type, and I can create a new one here on the fly. So I can say if the case origin came from a phone call, assign a specific Litmos course. I'll just go ahead and click any one of these and add it to the list. All right. So that's a good overview of the setup features. We're going to jump right into a case so I can continue with this storyline to show you how training can be recommended to someone performing a primary activity. And that's really one of the benefits of the Salesforce integration, is being able to have training served up to you in the context of your job. So it's embedded, and there's a real value there. It's just-in-time training to help you accomplish a task. So if I click on this case, we'll see that there's a recommended courses section here. Again, if I wanted to serve up training, I would configure or just change one of these fields to get the training to appear as a recommended course. Now, the product GC1060 aligns with one of the courses in the mapping, but it won't show if I've completed it. So what I'm going to do is click on an opportunity and hopefully show you an example of a recommended course that has not been completed, right? And so if we had looked at the opportunity mappings, we would see that the product on this opportunity, which is Genwatt Propane, has actually driven the course recommendation for the propane 100 kilowatt training course. And what this does is it allows me to absorb some useful material before I reach out to this person, because, well, the opportunity stage is in value proposition, right? So I can quickly access this training, look at the modules. This is an optional module, maybe I'll do it again, and I'll see that it looks to be a video walking me through a tutorial of the product right before I reach out to this prospect. So that's the recommended courses feature. When it comes to managing people that are outside of your organization, Salesforce has two objects for that: accounts and contacts. And as John mentioned, those for nonprofit organizations can often be volunteers. And your volunteers may be required to complete training before they can participate in event activities. So, for example, Mr. Andy Young here has been assigned 4 courses. We can see that clearly on the contact record. These are widgets installed with a package that allow you to quickly absorb the completion rates for training assigned to a contact record that's been created in Litmos. So if, again, I'm in the context of my job and I'm clicking through Salesforce, this should be alarming to me. So I want to reach out and maybe create a communication. You can automate that communication, right? If the completion percentage remains 0 for a certain amount of time, send out an email. If there was another course I decided Andy needs to take, I can actually do that on the fly within Salesforce through custom pages we've built. So it's going to give you, again, a little summary of what training Andy's assigned to, which allows you to determine I need to assign an additional course because that is missing from Andy's list. This is going to bring up the courses from within Litmos. And again, that's our UI being served up within the application, so the experience in and outside of Salesforce is going to be seamless. Going to be the product you're all familiar with. Now, if it's a volunteer organization and not just a person, you may have an account to manage those people. The training is summarized up to the account level for every contact that has been created in Litmos and assigned training. So it'll give you some details as to each course that's been assigned to the contacts within the account, a completion percentage. It allows you to even create new training profiles, people who belong to this account on the fly. Right? There's nobody that needs to be created. I can see the 3 contacts belonging to this account are all Litmos activated. So maybe I want to assign them some training in bulk. So we're pretty deeply integrated into Salesforce, as you can see, because I haven't had to touch the Litmos tab at all. Having said that, the Litmos tab will give you the end-to-end functionality that you would have in the standalone application. So everything you're accomplishing in the native pages of Salesforce, you can also come into Litmos to achieve. And of course, this is where you're going to create courses or create a team, maybe review a profile so you can assess some more details like recent activity within the system or a schedule, right, for someone who may be deemed an instructor as a part of the learning management system. So another important point to touch on is communities, right? So Salesforce has a community aspect. If you don't want to integrate training with your external website, or perhaps you want to merge some of what Salesforce offers in terms of third-party applications, other applications of the App Exchange, or some of the out-of-the-box templates, Litmos can be served up in a community as well. And what it allows you to do is quickly determine which type of individuals should be accessing this URL, add Litmos as a component to that URL, and here you can see the example of the Litmos University, right? So this would be an example community where I have discussions, maybe a feed, and when I click on the University tab, I can access training, right? So maybe the first thing they see when they come into the community. So there's a lot of different ways to distribute education through Salesforce. We've seen that you can distribute it to your employees within the organization. You may distribute it externally to partner organizations or to your volunteers or to other agencies or perhaps organizations that work with you from a regulatory standpoint. There's a component of data we haven't touched yet, so we're going to touch quickly upon that. And there was a lot of objects installed with the Litmos package, those objects being things like modules and courses and learning paths. Well, we served that data up into your org so you can view it in ready-made packages, packaged reports, or you can use the data in platform automation. Again, maybe you want to trigger actions off of course completions that allow you to easily scale operations in your organization. We can take a look at an example report here. We'll click on courses with users and contacts, and this will just show all the courses that have been synced into Salesforce. So it's a ton. This chart doesn't have any particular use until you filter it for your interest, but it's a good example of how much data is coming in, and we can look at completion percentages, the associations between courses and contacts or courses and users. And so the sky is the limit here, really, if you want to customize and create dashboards or landing pages for, as soon as you come into Salesforce, you get a glimpse as to how the training arena is doing. It's something very, very easy to do. I have an example report here that's pretty useful in a PDF, and this is a part of our installation guide, which we also pass out to you, and you're ready to begin kind of getting your hands dirty with the integration and testing some things. We think of even module data, right? So you can take a look at how people are performing in assessments, and this is particularly useful because when you bubble it up next to something they're doing in Salesforce, like making calls or closing cases or performing activities, you can compare their training aptitude next to their daily performance to help you drive what you should be building, what you should be focusing on improving internally to improve your operations in that respective functional department. So John had mentioned it earlier, that the installation of Litmos and Salesforce allows them to focus really a lot on more programs, creating more programs and creating more training, and having assessment data like this in your org allows you to focus on kind of the strong points and the weak points of that training. One point I am running out of time to cover, but I will just mention is this is all available on Salesforce Mobile 1. So although I don't have the tablet or the phone ready to show you, if we just quickly move to Salesforce 1 navigation, the Litmos tab is readily available as a navigation menu that you can drag and drop in here. And when you log in through your mobile device, you'll access the Litmos web. All the Visualforce pages you saw on contacts and accounts are also available, so you can get snapshots of your training on the go, again, for employees or people outside of the organization. So that sums up my, my demonstration. If you have questions about the system or about things I showed, please do feel free to submit those questions so we can follow up with you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for taking us through the high-level overview of the integration. I know there was a couple things that you want to talk around, just kind of the competitive advantage of integrating Litmos with Salesforce. So I know we can touch on that quickly here.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of summarize the benefits of why integrating Litmos with Salesforce, the easy way to say it is a competitive advantage. So you're going to boost the performance of people within the organization, or again, volunteers. You're going to make their experience in training and working with your company better. It could be as far as certifying or strengthening the knowledge retention, right, of partners, or making sure that they're compliant with certain regulations with respect to training. And then there's that component of measuring and analyzing the data that's being synced back into your org, making good use of it, and then reinventing processes, right, with respect to that data, kind of advancing and scaling programs. So those are the big takeaways, and I think these things are very evident in John Carlo's case about, you know, merging the two offices together on a single system, bringing all the siloed databases together, advancing and scaling the training program, and freeing up time and activities for, you know, additional initiatives, which you can put together the two. Saving time is saving money.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Steve. And really why we wanted to, run through these is for those of you on the call that are, kind of at the entry stage to rolling out an LMS, these are some of the items right here that can really help you build that business case internally. Case studies like John's and kind of, showing the functionality that Steve has shown is extremely important. But, from a kind of a base value, building that business case, these are some of kind of the main key points that would, that would really want to take us to management to roll out a learning platform internally. So again, Steve, thank you so much for covering that. Elizabeth and John, appreciate your pieces as well. Did want to take a few minutes here to cover some Q&A. So John, I think this one's for you. We've gotten a few questions just around adoption of the program. So I know we got one question around, are kind of the older existing volunteers receptive to the new systems that you guys are putting out there? We've also just kind of gotten some general questions around, how are you guys driving adoption of the, the new system, the training just in general. So would you mind kind of touching on that and kind of covering how, how your existing volunteers have taken to the new systems and things?
Sure. We definitely have a wide range of volunteer ages, and with sort of our rollout of various applications that are a lot more technical than they used to be, the adoption with the older volunteers is a little bit more challenging, but they've definitely been receptive to all of the new sort of technology that we're using. And once getting over that initial sort of like learning period in the very beginning, everyone is using the system and happy, and it's really easy for everyone. We thankfully have a great volunteer services staff that really helps pay a little bit more attention to our older volunteers who might be needing a little bit more help. But at the end of the day, everyone's using the same system, and adoption has been fairly seamless, and it hasn't really been a problem.
We also got another question just around your data. So you talked a lot about data being really important and using the reports to go back to your management to justify new community programs and things like that. So the question is around are there any specific data points that you guys are looking at to to drive those changes?
One of our programs is our Community Cares program, and they deal with the feral cat community. We started tracking sort of all of the feral colonies in our city using Salesforce, and we started to be able to see exactly where these colonies were popping up and sort of the sheer number of them, and we were able to sort of put that on a map. And this data has allowed us to request more funding for that program, and that was all internally. So our Community Cares program internally was able to have more data to talk to leadership and request sort of funding for their programs and sort of the impact that it's been having. So that's one really big sort of program-wide benefit of having the data. For our volunteer services team so far, it's been really easy for them to manage where people are at in their sort of learning path. In order to be a volunteer, you have to take several courses, and so when they're in the system looking at these volunteers, it's very easy for them to see sort of how far along volunteers are in their path to becoming a dog volunteer or a cat volunteer. All the reports are built out and they stay current, so all they have to do is click open a report and they can see all of that information and really get a handle on, are they onboarding quick enough? Where are people getting stuck? Do they need to sort of help ease the process of one course to another? And it's a lot easier to see that now.
A couple more here. So it looks like one just came through. Can time spent report on courses be ran via Salesforce? So in Salesforce, can you see how much time? That's probably maybe Steve, if you want to address that one, and maybe how that can be correlated to other things in Salesforce possibly?
Yeah, absolutely. So time spent is a field available on the course object, the learning path object, even the module object. If you have the module capable of tracking time, time will come in as kind of like a numerical string. There is a bit of a conversion there, but you can tell based on high times, low times on that value if people are really absorbing all of the content you have in that module, whether it's challenging or too easy, right? If they're spending not a lot of time on it and they're getting 100% on an assessment, maybe it's just a roadblock, or that quiz needs to be made a little bit more tough. But time spent is something you can measure and aggregate for a user or for a group of users. For tips on how to configure those reports, we can help, but we certainly encourage you to connect with Salesforce for maybe or look at their help guide that's really well built out on how to configure those things.
Awesome. Well, thank you for addressing that one as well, Steve. So it's kind of an interesting question. I was wondering kind of how to position this, but it sounds like definitely been able to show some success with Litmos. The question is around how do you think it would be different if you had chosen a different LMS? I know you addressed kind of what you were using before and kind of your reasons for using Litmos. From the Litmos side, one thing that that we kind of position is that there's LMS ecosystem, as everyone knows on the call, it's fairly large, but when you narrow that down to systems that integrate with Salesforce and integrate well with Salesforce, it's a pretty small group. So John, I don't know if you want to add anything as far as how you feel like it would have been. I know you maybe haven't used other systems, but anything you want to add to that?
Sure. I echo that. I feel like the integration piece was sort of the most important thing that we were looking for, and that was a huge benefit to cut a lot of the manual course completion checking that our staff was doing. I feel like from a Salesforce administrator perspective, we got pretty lucky that our learning and development team was already using Litmos internally, and it was at that point standalone. They weren't using it in any of its integrations with any other systems. They were simply using it to sort of train us up as staff. So I feel like we got really lucky that there was such a great integration, because we definitely wanted to keep using that system since we saw, you know, great success internally. And it was great that it integrated so well with Salesforce, so we were able to expand that externally as well.
Great. Well, thank you, John. So I think just kind of rounding up the webinar here, we will be covering many more topics like these at our annual conference called Litmos C3, which takes place in Las Vegas, Nevada, September 18th through 20th at the Wynn Resort. It's an amazing event. We have tons of learning, L&D, and HR analysts that participate. This year we have Patty McCord speaking, who's the former Chief People Officer from Netflix. So it's going to be a really, really exciting event. So to learn more about that, or to potentially get more information or register, you can find that at litmos.com/C3. We'd love to see as many of you there as possible, whether you're a customer or not. So again, our contact information is on this slide if you want to get in touch with any of us. And just want to thank you all again for our speakers, Steve, John, and Elizabeth. I appreciate you being on the call today. And for all of our attendees taking out time out of your day, really, really appreciate it, and hope to speak with all of you soon. Thank you.